Hello to everybody. My name is John Nielsen. I'm here today to talk a little bit about some of the advanced security capabilities required in the marketplace for both iOS and Android managed devices. So without further ado, I am going to jump into the presentation. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. So what we plan on talking about today are a couple things. The first of which are really what are the essential features of a mobile device management solution. What are some of the basic must-haves in any solution that is out in the marketplace, and then tie that into what some of the advanced security management capabilities for those mobile devices are needed as you get your foot in the door and really want to take more control, more proactive compliance management of your devices. So we'll talk a bit about automated security. We'll concentrate on real-time compliance identification of violated devices in violation and enforcement of those devices, what you can do to actually take action automatically on those devices. We'll talk about some of the essential features of a real-time security-based compliance system, what we feel are essential and what you should look for in any solution out there. We'll talk a little bit about what value this brings to not only the IT team but management teams and users. And last but not least, we'll talk about some real-world use cases where MAS360 can help solve some typical pain points around security, around mobile device management, and around compliance. So from a basic perspective, most of our customers we speak to and prospects we speak to really begin the conversation with the basics. They're basically looking for a way to define basic security and management settings right off the bat. So really what you're looking at the top of the screen are the must-have abilities in a mobile device management solution. For example, being able to remotely wipe a device if lost or stolen, or being able to reset a passcode if the passcode on the device is forgotten, or even being able to take more strict action on the devices, such as applying passcode compliance policies, encryption enforcement policies, and device restrictions such as not allowing YouTube or not allowing web browsing or application purchases. So once those basics are covered, which you'll really see across the board from an MDM vendor perspective, really the advanced security becomes a concern. So the desire to implement a more advanced management features really come into play, and this includes things like deploying applications, deploying documents to your devices, having an application blacklist, whitelist type functionality, and then even the ability to take proactive action on devices that are in violation of that policy. So the automatic identification of those devices, and then the automatic enforcement of actions on those devices that are identified as either in violation or out of compliance. So really, what are some of the essentials for that real-time compliance engine, which we'll be focusing on today? So these are some of the items that we feel are most important when you're looking for an advanced event-based security solution. So the real-time detection of violations. So really, the ability to know what devices are out of compliance, the moment an out-of-compliance event occurs. Whether it's a device that's newly jailbroken or the installation of a disallowed application, you'll want to know in real time which devices really don't meet your security standards. In addition to the real-time violation detection, you're going to want to look for real-time notification support. So whether it's notifying end users that they are in an out-of-compliance or violation state, or notifying a set of admins that really manage those devices that, hey, user A's device is now jailbroken. What do you want to do? So that real-time notification support is really just as, if not more important, than the violation detection support. And those notifications should be pretty flexible in terms of via email, via SMS, via real-time messaging functionality. In addition to those two items, the automated action enforcement piece is pretty important. So not only do you want to know what devices are in violation, you want to be able to automate appropriate actions on those devices. So whether or not it's blocking a device from your email infrastructure, so making sure at a device level that that device will not be able to send or receive email if you're a note shop or if you're an exchange shop. Whether it's blocking devices from corporate resources, so not allowing VPN connections, not allowing connections to corporate Wi-Fi signals, or even to an extreme, wiping that device. So you'll want to make sure that not only are the violations detected and users are notified, the automation of that enforcement, taking IT out of the picture in terms of making sure your devices are in a compliant state. And then one of the more important features that we see is really marking devices as exempt. So everybody knows there's always going to be a VIP user that you may want to notify IT of a device being out of compliance, but you may not want to automatically take action such as blocking their email or wiping their device. So you should look for the concept of VIP or important device differentiation, where you can actually mark those devices, look at the policy compliance, look at the compliance state of the devices, but not automatically take action until an IT admin actually interjects there. And then finally, full audit capability. So the ability to track device compliance changes for both internal and external audits. So it's important that any action taken on these devices, whether it's based on an out-of-compliance event or a policy violation, you'll want to know that everything's being logged, any action taken, whether it's manual by an admin or automated by an MDM platform, is logged for compliance reasons. Okay, so what are some of the basics around the options that you want to look for? So some of the critical capabilities from a detection perspective, at a minimum, a platform should be able to detect some of these items you see on the screen. So making sure devices that are syncing with your email infrastructure are being managed by your MDM platform. The detection of OS versions. So we'll talk about this a little more in the use case functionality, but what OS versions are on the device? Are they a security risk based on any vulnerabilities that have been announced in the marketplace? And the ability to take action against those versions of code that aren't up to snuff or aren't approved by your IT team. Device encryption and wipe support, very important in terms of identifying those devices that may be in your environment that don't support encryption or don't support remote wiping of the device. Another important piece is jailbreak and root detection. So the ability to detect whether or not an iOS device is jailbroken or an Android device is rooted, which has its own set of really policy concerns, security concerns. We'll touch on that a bit in the use case section also. And more event-based items such as SIM card changes, which could be a way for users to circumvent security policies, or roaming state changes, which is more of an expense management item. But you want to make sure that at the very least, solutions that you look for these advanced security settings can meet and can identify some of these criteria we talked about. In addition to the identification of those events, you'll want to make sure that you can take action in an automated fashion on those type of events. So you want to alert and email the user, alert admins. You would want to be able to block email access for those devices in violation. So if a device is out of compliance, automatically block their email until that device, until the compliance event is remediated. So basically, block them from email, let them fix what the problem is, and then reinstate that access to email automatically. And in addition to the blocking of just email, you may want to block from additional corporate resources such as Wi-Fi hotspots or VPN integration, or like I said earlier, even wipe that device. So real-time compliance, as you probably know, in the desktop laptop world is very important, and that's really making its way towards the mobile device smartphone space also. There's a large amount of value associated with an automated solution to really enforce that policy, ensure devices are not in violation, and take action on those devices if they are violated. So not only does it help your IT team in terms of automating that interaction, removing the need for IT intervention, but you can also mitigate business and legal risk, make sure you're proactively managing those devices from a security compliance perspective, and ensure that you meet your company's or your industry's compliance requirements from a regulation perspective.
John?
Hey, Joe, you made it.
I'm back. Yeah, the risk of doing this over a wireless phone.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So where we are now is really, so we talked a little bit about advanced security needs, what you want to look in a solution outside of those basic MDM capabilities that maybe get your foot in the door managing these devices. So what we wanted to do for a bit is really show you how the MAS 360 platform can help you meet some of those more common use cases around security compliance, and really automate the enforcements in some real-world use cases and scenarios. I know, Joe, you will be putting up some polls for our users today during some of these use case discussions. So everybody on the phone, keep an eye out for some polls that may pop up if you want to answer those and take a look at the answers afterwards. Joe, anything to add there on the polling?
No, so we're gonna start our first poll right now. So it's pretty simple. It'll run for about 20 seconds, and we'll display the results to everyone when it's finished.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. So one of the main use cases that we've mentioned a couple times during the presentation is really enforcing a minimum version on your devices allowed in your network. Whether it's an iOS device or an Android device, as most of everybody on the phone knows, there's vulnerabilities on both sides of the house. Apple recently patched the vulnerability in mid-July that was a security issue found by a couple of the companies out there that provide jailbreak assistance. But there was a new release of iOS code 4.3.5 in mid-July that you're going to want to make sure your users at least upgrade to that version of code. So through the platform, it's very simple to define a compliance rule that basically says this is the minimum version of iOS that I want to be on my network. Or if you're concerned with some of on the Android side of the house, some of the encryption protocols and some of the older Android versions that did not support encryption, you can basically set up that minimum version check and basically automatically message all of your users if they do not meet that minimum version. You can send them a message, you can give them the ability to upgrade based on your instructions, and if they don't upgrade immediately or within a certain time frame, you can take action on that device. So basically, in this example, restrict the device from connecting to any corporate resources until that device is upgraded to an approved version, to a secure version. And the nice thing about MAS 360 is when that upgrade takes place and when that device is no longer in violation, that access to those corporate resources will automatically be restored. So no IT intervention is needed. They will be restricted when deemed out of compliance, and they will gain access back to the systems once the violation is addressed on the machine and the device is back in compliance. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, just a couple things here. We did a webinar, I guess, probably about 6 months ago now, on Android fragmentation and how difficult it was for companies to manage Android just because there were just so many variations of the platform out there that coming up with a consistent policy set that was secure enough really was a challenge. And this feature didn't exist back then when we held that webinar. And I think this is kind of a great example of how kind of features in the MDM marketplace and the products in the marketplace are kind of evolving to help solve these particular problems that, companies really have out there in the real world, right? There are still tons of Android 2.1 phones out there, right, that we would say really shouldn't be used in a corporate environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even on the Android side of the house, there is a concept of the custom versions, custom ROMs, and things like that. And using a compliance system such as this, you can really limit the devices, number one, from being rooted, so adding the ability to load those custom ROMs, and then you can use the minimum version detection to make sure they meet the most secure version for that carrier and your environment.
Can you see the poll results up there, John?
Yep, we see them. So it actually looks like, based on our polling, about half of the respondents don't have a policy today around the enforcement of these versions of code. Actually, I just lost my polling results.
The question is, why don't you have a policy? Is it because you don't have a way to enforce it?
Right. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll jump to the next use case, which we've touched on a little bit already, but it's really that jailbroken iPhone case or the rooted Android case. And based on a couple recent surveys, actually with the assistance of the people out there that assist in the jailbreaking of devices, about 8 to 9% of all iOS-based devices in the world are jailbroken. So there's a good portion of devices that may or may not be in your environment that are actually in a jailbroken state. That 8 to 9% is really a worldwide number. There are some regions of the world where jailbroken device runs a little more rampant. So I think about 35% of iOS devices in China are actually jailbroken. So if you're doing international business, if you're concerned with security internationally, this may be something close to your heart. Where jailbreaking of an iOS device, as most of you probably know, essentially removes all security protection that Apple put in place on the device. So it allows the loading of potentially unsafe software that may introduce security risk into your environment in terms of intercepting communications or pulling information directly off of those devices. So a common use case that we hear from some of the folks we work with is a way to ensure that jailbroken devices are not on your network. So through the slide, you can see very simply, you could set up a policy that says, if I detect a jailbroken or rooted device, automatically message the user. Let them know that they're running an unapproved device or they are in violation of company process, and give them a period of time to remediate that issue. So give them 2 days to, whether it's unjailbreak the device, work with somebody in IT to correct the issue. But if that device is not brought back in compliance within X number of days, hours, minutes, you would automatically wipe that device. So through the Mass 360 interface, you can fully automate the detection, the messaging, and the ability to take an action on that device if still out of compliance after a certain amount of time.
And what's great about it is the fact that it just happens in real time, right? This isn't like, I get up in the morning and there's an email telling me that I've got a bunch of problems I've got to go deal with. Yeah,
exactly. Thanks, Joe. So yeah, and this is actually the poll that I can see. So it looks like about 50% of the participants today don't really have a policy around jailbroken or rooted devices. So it's probably pretty important, number one, you identify what devices on your network or being managed by, being used by your users meet that criteria. So step one is visibility, obviously, know who's jailbroken, and then you can build your policy, build your remediation workflows in place to actually take action if you wanted to. So that's good information there.
All right, we're going to run our second poll now, John. All right, so I'm going to open that up right now, and we're just going to ask folks, do you have jailbroken or rooted devices accessing your corporate resources today? Let's see how folks answer.
Yeah, and based on the 50% that don't have a policy, we may see a lot of unknowns on this slide. So, but as we're answering that poll question, what I'll do is flip to our third use case, which really comes into play around application management and application compliance. So application management is a pretty large need, not only in traditional laptop and desktop functionalities where Microsoft has the concept of whitelisting and blacklisting for known malware and things like that, but it's really making its way into the smartphone space also. Based on a recent report I read, about 20% of available Android applications on the marketplace today pose some sort of security risk, whether or not that's granting third-party access to private information, the ability to send SMS messages without the user's knowledge, or even make phone calls without the user knowledge. So it's very important to really take a look at applications that are being loaded on these devices, whether they are corporate-owned or employee-owned devices, just to mitigate the risk of your network and of data loss and security breaches on those devices. So some examples of really application management, whitelisting, blacklisting on smart devices is the ability to block file sharing software, right? So if you don't want users running software that can sync their data, sync corporate data to the cloud, such as Dropbox or Keynote or Evernote, you can define a policy that says, if you're running this disallowed app, I want to automatically take action on your device. So whether or not that action is just alerting the user, blocking the user from your corporate email until that application is removed, or even wiping that device, you can fully set up a policy that says, if a disallowed application is identified, so application blacklisting, or if a non-approved application is identified, so the concept of whitelisting, you can fully automate that process and make sure your users are only running approved software on their devices that meet your company's policy. And I think, Joe, we have one last poll maybe around application management. If not, we can go back to the jailbroken question, but it looks like, based on our initial thinking, it looks about 50% of people aren't sure whether or not jailbroken devices are accessing corporate information, which really leads back to that that identification, the visibility into these devices to determine which devices are in security violation, and then, if needed, take that advanced step to automated action and compliance.
Yeah, so we would definitely say that if your answer is not sure, then there's a best practice here that you should consider getting a policy for. So
yeah,
I'll start
absolutely.
up the last poll, John. Pretty simple. We're going to ask folks, how do you actually get in touch with your users about OS upgrades for their smartphones and tablets?
Yeah, and this really ties back to the minimum OS version rule set, where if software that's been identified as vulnerable is running on these devices, do you message your users to really tell them, hey, Apple's released an upgrade, we recommend you take that upgrade? Or do you just really leave it up to your users to do the research and perform those OS upgrades to mitigate those security vulnerabilities?
John, I'm going to play the results right now.
All right, let's see. Okay, so it looks like a little less than half of users aren't doing anything, so leaving it up to the device owners or your employees to actually perform those upgrades and do the research on themselves. And about another half looks like you guys manually message your users via email when there are recommended updates, which is a good solution, but there's still some manual effort that has to go in place when that happens. So I'm sure all of your goals are to automate that process when new releases are out, automatically message your users and let them perform those upgrades on their own. So great, good information.
John, that was great. I mean, you know I'm a big fan of this feature, and I think most of our customers who start out with doing the basics, what we would call like MDM 101, kind of quickly see the power in these more advanced features where they can actually get their policies defined and enforced for them in real time. So, we're excited about it. John, I know you're excited about it because you own this particular feature in MAS 360. So thanks a lot for presenting that for us today. And folks, I apologize for our audio problems a little bit earlier, so I'll do some of the housekeeping right now. The slides are going to be made available, and you should get an email right after we end the webinar that'll have a link to where you can get the slides for today's webinar. And we'll have the recording of this webinar posted at that same URL sometime tomorrow. So if you want to pass it along to a coworker, you can do it that way, or go listen to it again yourself. What John and I are going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of Q&A in a couple of minutes. So there have been some questions coming in. You can send them to us via the chat panel, and John and I will do our best to tackle the ones we can, at least until we run out of time. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about briefly before we jump to the Q&A is one of the big advantages we think MAS 360 offers, which is it's a completely cloud-based platform. And so the value in that to you is a couple of things. One is you can try this product very easily. If you go to our website, you'll find links for getting started, or take a tour, take a quick start. That will allow you to very quickly, and when I say quickly, I mean within a minute or two, create an account for your company in MAS 360 and begin the process of managing mobile devices. So there really isn't another product out there in the marketplace that gives you that ability right now. And so we know there's lots of people still learning about mobile device management. We would encourage you to eval just to get your hands on an MDM platform and find out how they work, what the features are, and educate yourself and learn, because we realize there's still a lot of folks in that particular category. If you're maybe doing MDM through Exchange ActiveSync or Notes Traveler, kind of one of the more basic types of MDM ecosystems out there, again, you can take the MAS 360 eval, and you can learn how more advanced MDM systems operate and the kinds of capabilities you get with them. So again, it's another great way to kind of educate yourself, maybe more on the what do I get in a 102 type of MDM scenario than a 101 scenario. So when this webinar ends, your browser is going to get redirected to a URL that should look very similar to this page you see up here, and you can, within 5 minutes, sign up for an eval, and we hope you're going to do that and give it a shot. John, could you click me over to the next slide?
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. And so, one of the things that, we're really focused on with MAS 360 is ease of use. That's, ease of use for the IT staff in terms of deploying and getting an MDM solution in place. Ease of use for IT in terms of day-to-day administration, which the real-time compliance engine is a great example of. And ease of use for the end user, meaning they can quickly get their mobile devices enrolled over the air, and you can get the benefit of being able to manage and secure them through a centralized interface. So we put a big stress on ease of use. Network World did some independent evaluations of major MDM platforms, published the results at the end of May. And we were obviously gratified to be selected the winner, and one of the things we were cited for was our ease of use. So it's not just me saying it or John saying it, it's kind of independent folks that are out there in the industry looking at products across the board saying it as well. So we're pretty proud of that. So hopefully that will give you another reason to want to give it a try. So with that, I'm going to start trying to take some of the Q&A, and there are quite a number of questions here. So I'll start off, and then John, if you want to jump in, I'll let you jump in, but here we go. First question, do you support other mobile platforms, BlackBerry or Windows Phone 7? So the answer is yes, we support both. So we can integrate MAS 360 with a BlackBerry Enterprise server to manage and secure BlackBerry devices, and we can obviously manage Windows Phone 7 devices through ActiveSync, which I think is the only management capability that they currently support. I'm sure that Microsoft will be adding more sophisticated MDM capabilities the way Apple has and Google's starting to in their platforms. And obviously, as soon as those APIs that we can use to better manage the devices appear, we'll integrate with.
Yeah, and just to add a bit on that, we're very much anticipating the next release of the Windows Phone 7 OS, which I believe was codenamed Mango. where Microsoft is introducing the ability to perform that management functionality outside of ActiveSync. So that's definitely something that we will be introducing as soon as it's available.
Great. Another question here, is there differentiation between corporate liable and individual liable devices? So I guess I'll answer this one in a couple of ways. So one is when you enroll a device in MAS 360, you as the administrator can tag it as either an employee-owned device or a corporate-owned device. Once that tagging's been done, that characteristic of the device has been set, then you can start to build specific policies and enforcement actions based on the types of device. So you could have a much different policy for employee-owned devices than for corporate-owned devices. And, you know, we see that all the time, right? That's a very common use case and a very common thing that, you know, the folks that manage mobile devices for a living do. They'll have a separate policy set for individual devices or employee-owned versus corporate-owned. And the other thing that I think is often different is, you know, the policies that people agree to if they intend to use a you know, an employee-owned device on the corporate network or with corporate resources like mail or VPN. So we do see a differentiation. MAS 360 is built to allow companies to securely manage those individual devices as well as their corporate-owned devices. So it really is a big part of what we do, is giving corporations a safe and trusted way to enable those employee-owned devices, because that's certainly something everybody wants to do right now. John, I don't know if you had anything to add on that.
No, I think you covered it well.
Does MAS 360 manage Windows mobile phones? The answer is yes. We do it through Exchange ActiveSync. So MAS 360 can integrate with your ActiveSync environment, and you can issue all of the commands that you issue through your Exchange ActiveSync infrastructure through MAS 360 and manage your Windows mobile devices. So the answer there is yes. How are you securing the MAS 360 cloud-based app? So that's a great question. So obviously we put a lot of stress on it, and I guess a couple things are key. One is we are SAS 70 Type 2 certified and have been for a number of years now. We also are routinely scheduling different types of security tests and assessments of the software and the services. So, you know, obviously we're a security company. We understand security. We know it's important to our customers and critical to our platform, and there's a huge focus on it inside of FiberLink. So that's how we do it. Question about how long is the trial, how many users can be managed. So I think the quick answer is it's a 30-day trial, and I think you can have up to 25 devices in the trial. And that can be any types of devices you want, Androids, iPhones, iPads, all that type of stuff. Can we remote into devices? That's an interesting question. So the simple answer is right now is those platforms, specifically iOS and Android, don't allow it without jailbreaking or rooting the device. So there is no, I guess, architectured way by these vendors of these platforms to do that right now. A question about scalability and the MAS 360 platform, yes, it's very scalable. That's part of what a cloud-based platform is supposed to be. We've got almost 1.5 million devices under management, and you know, we have companies with tens of thousands of mobile devices that they manage through MAS 360. You know, we've got you know, multiple data centers. Everything's fault tolerant. There's disaster recovery. Those are all the things that you get by buying a cloud-based service, kind of baked in, that frankly, if you're going to try to do MDM yourself or you're going to do an on-prem type of solution, is your problem to go figure out, right? So getting an instance of it up might be simple, but getting multiple instances up and getting your processes together for what happens if you need to switch over to a DR center or something like that isn't quite so simple. And so one of the big advantages, we believe, of buying a cloud-based service for this is that we worry about all those problems. We worry about scaling. We worry about fault tolerance. We worry about availability, capacity. We worry about upgrading the software, right? So folks asked about Windows Phone 7 support. I mean, I can guarantee you that we will have Windows Phone 7 support in our platform probably within a few weeks of Microsoft making it available, if not sooner. John, I think you may know the answer to this. When Apple released the latest version of iOS, how soon did we have support for that in?
It was within 48 hours, so we were ready for support beforehand because obviously we work with Apple from a development perspective through their beta and alpha process, but as far as enabling support for our customers, it was pretty quick.
There's a question about can you set policy by multiple groups within a company? John, I know you know all about this one, so I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of tagging devices, employee-owned versus corporate-owned. So obviously those are a couple logical groups, but we can also integrate with your Active Directory, pull group information based on AD, and then you can really define any number of policies for your devices, whether it's your finance team, your IT team. Give them different policies and assign those policies out at an individual basis, at a group level, or at a global level. So full customization of who gets which policies, and you have full configuration ability in terms of defining those groups of individuals. It could be based on, like I said, the Active Directory attributes, could be based on device attributes, could be based on user attributes. So a lot of flexibility there.
Thanks, John. That's definitely one of the strengths of the platform. Question that we get all the time about AP&S certs for managing iOS devices. Yeah, there is no magic here. If you want to manage iOS devices using the native iOS APIs that Apple provides with iOS, you have to get an AP&S cert to do that. That's Apple's requirement, and it's really that simple. We've got a lot of good documentation at the Master Center. If you go onto our website and visit the Master Center, you'll see videos on how to apply for an AP&S cert. You'll find FAQs on why you need an AP&S cert and what to do once you get an AP&S cert from Apple to upload it to MAS 360 so that you can manage your iOS devices. So it's just part of Apple's ecosystem. It's the way they do it. Google works things a little bit differently in the Android ecosystem, and you don't go through the certification process. So with Android devices, you can literally get them under management as soon as you've got a MAS 360 account set up. So, I mean, I'd say, John, you must do this as well as me. I mean, there must be at least 3 or 4 times a week when I demo the product for somebody, set them up with a test account, and they're managing their Android devices that they've got in the room with them within 15 minutes. Question about whether MAS is certified for government or military use. Actually, interestingly enough, we did a webinar, I think about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, with Thomas.
Oh boy, I didn't see that one coming.
Who is CTO
yeah,
with
so did I. Yeah.
And is a big believer in MAS. The GSA uses it for managing their infrastructure, their mobile devices, and we are in the process of going FedRAMP certification as well. So obviously, it's government space is one that we're strong in, and it's important to us, and we're investing to make sure that we've complied with all the needs and policies in that marketplace. John, here's one I wanted to ask, have you tackle corporate data versus personal data on personal devices.
Yeah, definitely. So that's actually something I would categorize as basic functionality at this time. So the ability to do both what we call a full wipe, which is obviously resetting a device to factory default, and a selective wipe. And what that selective wipe really does through our platform, it's a wipe that you can leverage for maybe employee-owned devices where we will remove all email profiles, all Wi-Fi profiles, all VPN profiles. Anything associated with your corporate connectivity would be removed selectively from that device, and things such as pictures, videos, local contacts, purchase applications would not be wiped from that device. So selective versus full wipe is definitely supported, and definitely something that's pretty important if you're allowing employee-owned devices.
Okay, super. So a question about the App Store, and I think the question is really this: Can companies post private apps on their Maz 360 App Store?
You want me to take that one, Joe? So the answer is yes. So if you're in the business of developing your own applications, whether it's for Android or iOS, Maz 360 will give you an application management interface to really, number one, upload those packages to our cloud-based infrastructure, so host those packages for you, and then deploy those packages based on the kind of the grouping we talked about earlier. So you can fully have control over who receives which applications that you've sent out, whether it's individuals or groups, on both the Android and the iOS side of the house.
Super. Yeah, there's another question here, John, maybe something we ought to clear up. The question is really this: can Maz automatically update iOS devices versus just notify people?
Yeah.
How that works.
Yeah, good question. So unfortunately today that's a limitation put forth by Apple. So with their iOS 4 platform, they require that tethered attended type upgrade. So if a device needs to be upgraded, you have to plug it into iTunes and go through that process. So as of this point, there's nothing really any vendor out there can do as far as pushing those OS upgrades over the air to those devices. There is some talk from an iOS 5 perspective. Well, not some talk. It's been confirmed from an iOS 5 perspective that Apple will be opening up functionality for over-the-air upgrades. We hope to seamlessly integrate with that and provide the ability to manage those upgrades over the air. So right now the answer is no. Hopefully soon when iOS 5 comes out on the Apple side, and I know Google's working towards this also, we'll be able to help out in that fashion too. But right now it's notifications and actions.
Super. John, here's a question I think about some of the screenshots that you showed. And the question is this, on the screenshots I think you showed the enforcement action to be a wipe. And the question is, what other actions are supported besides a wipe?
Good question. So there actually was a slide. I won't go back to it now, but the main actions are blocking from email, so integrating with your email system to block at a device level on email, wiping the device, obviously, which was seen, restricting that device from corporate resources, whether it's the Wi-Fi profiles, blocking those, or the VPN profiles. Some additional actions are just a standard alert, so messaging the end user, not taking any sort of automated action on the device, but just messaging. And then things such as changing policies, right? Applying a different policy if a device is out of compliance. So maybe you want to switch to a more strict or less strict policy based on that device compliance state. So those are the main supported options.
Super. Question about WebOS support. So we do support management of WebOS devices today through ActiveSync. And ActiveSync is really, I guess the kind of lowest common denominator or least common denominator for MDM capabilities. So most systems support ActiveSync because it is kind of the de facto standard for push email to mobile devices. And obviously has some, basic MDM capabilities built into it. So almost every mobile device out there supports ActiveSync in some way, shape, or form, and that is how we manage WebOS devices today. Obviously, the other thing that's going to probably factor into our decisions about WebOS is, frankly, its market penetration, right? So, if it is accepted out there in the marketplace, and it's an important platform to support. We're obviously going to provide the very best support we can. If there's APIs available, we'll integrate to them. If there aren't, then we'll use ActiveSync. So that's probably the best explanation I could give of our approach to WebOS. So, we support it today via ActiveSync, and if it, takes off in the marketplace and there are APIs that let us do more with it, we'll take advantage of those and use it. John, there's another question I think you could take. Question about whether there is two-factor authentication support for management portal logging into MAS 360 for an administrator.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an admin perspective, we do support two-factor authentication. It's actually something we built into the platforms for some of our government customers. So basically, when an authentication attempt takes place, when an admin authenticates to our cloud platform, they will be sent a SMS message or an email with a one-time use passcode. So not only would they need to enter their administrative credentials, they would also have to enter their one-time use passcode to gain access to the management portal. So from a two-factor perspective, that meets most of the requirements. We don't integrate with legacy systems that are kind of going away in terms of token-based authentication or things like that, but we took the approach of building our own.
Super. One quick one here I will handle. Question is, how do you charge for this? So our pricing model is really pretty simple. It's per device per month. So you'll have X number of devices that you want to protect and manage via MAS 360. There's a per device charge per month for that, and it's that simple. There's no other fees, there's no upgrade fees, no installation fees, no maintenance fees, no support fees. 24/7 by 365 support's included, and we try to make it just as simple to budget for and buy and procure the product as we do to use it. So hopefully that's a good answer there. John, there's a couple more here, and I'll let you handle this one. Do you have mapping software to trace stolen phones?
Good question. So on the Android, yes. So at any time we can reach out to Android devices, enable the GPS if disabled. So if the user goes in and actually turns off GPS functionality, we will see that. We will enable that GPS functionality and do a real-time lookup of that location. So that's fully supported on the Android platform. A little different on the iOS platform. What we basically track is the last known location of iOS devices. So you can very simply pull up a map. We actually partner with Microsoft for this from a Bing perspective, but you can pull up a map and you can see where that iPhone or iPad or iOS device last was identified. So the real-time lookup isn't supported by Apple. They really like to leave that for themselves to take advantage of in their Mobile Me product. But we can do the next best thing, which is tell you where that device last was on the iOS side of the house.
Great. Question about reporting. So we didn't demo the portal today, which we usually do, but frankly, one of the features that people like the most about MAS 360 is there is a full business intelligence dashboard with graphical reports that give you kind of, the dashboards that you can use for managing your infrastructure at a high level and reporting on it at a high level. So even though we didn't show those things today, there are certainly a ton of built-in reports in MAS. John, I don't know if you know like how many or what, but there's dozens and dozens of built-in reports available.
Yeah, I would say dozens and dozens is accurate. There's a bunch in there.
Here's another one, John, that we may want to clear up. Is there a MAS 360 app for managing Apple and Android devices instead of web access? So maybe we ought to kind of go over exactly how the MAS 360 web-based admin portal integrates with the software that's out on the agent side in the Apple and in the iOS and the Android world.
Sure, and I actually read that question a little differently in terms of using an application to provide management functionality instead of the web access. But basically, our cloud-based infrastructure basically houses our management platform, and we communicate securely with all of the devices being managed either through Apple's APNS messaging network, so a secure way to directly reach out directly to those iOS devices. On the iOS side of the house, no application is required to be on the device to take advantage of those management capabilities. Everything's done over the air with the Apple management APIs. On the Android side of the house, we do have an application that sits in the marketplace. That application, if you go to the Android market today, you can just do a search for MAS 360. That application basically allows us to leverage the local APIs that the Googles of the world and even some of the hardware providers like Motorola build some APIs, things like that. We can leverage those local APIs to manage those devices, again, over the air, but there is an agent on the Android device. In regards to the question of an application to actually perform management functionality, instead of using a web browser, instead of using our web portal, that is something we actually have in beta today. So we're looking at creating, say, an iPad app that would specifically be used for managing your devices that are enrolled for management outside of the web portal, if that's the direction the question was coming from.
Okay. Yeah, good point, John. I could have read it wrong. Another question about does the portal have the ability to group devices for organizational purposes?
Yeah, definitely. So you full customization in terms of creating groups and reporting and managing those groups. If the question is in regards to separation of groups from an admin perspective, so admin A only sees these devices, admin B sees those other devices, that's something we're working towards and should have pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean we do have role-based administration, and you can assign different capabilities to different admins based on their role, if they're a help desk person, the security person. So a lot of those features are there today. The other thing I think that, because we get asked this question a lot about group management of devices, is we do have the ability to integrate with groups from Active Directory and let you leverage those types of groupings in order to administer your users and do things like if I move a user from group A to group B in Active Directory, change their policies on their mobile device from this to that. So we do have those kind of capabilities as well. And, John, I would say that grouping capability we've got is probably one of the most useful features. You can create groups based on practically anything that we manage or track about a device. Hardware characteristics, software installed on the device, networks that it's using, home carriers. It really is very rich.
Yeah, there's a couple hundred items that you can base that group membership on. So yeah, absolutely.
So a couple folks here probably know our pricing models better than I do. So someone's asking what the $10 for unlimited devices refers to. So I mentioned earlier that we have a per device per month fee. Obviously, these days, more and more users are carrying multiple devices, multiple mobile devices. So we actually offer a user-based model as well for companies that want to use MAS 360 for managing laptops, smartphones, tablets as well. And, typically, once you get to two mobile devices, you're kind of past the break-even point, and you'll actually save money by using the user-based pricing model over the per-device model. So we offer both. And obviously we're anticipating that the number of mobile devices per user is only going to increase there. There's another question here about do we have a service provider model? So we certainly do have a service provider model. We have a pretty large partner program. And, the question is really around can I manage, if I'm a service provider, can I manage different customers within MAS 360? And the answer is yes, you can do that. There's kind of a fully hierarchical management capability where if you're a service provider that's partnered with us, you do have the ability to manage all of your customers via a single login. So probably, something that would obviously be important to a service provider, maybe not so much to the end users that are on the call. Don, I think we've just about exhausted it. We got a ton of questions, and we're right up against our 3 o'clock limit. So I appreciate everyone's time today. Hey, John, thank you. You read my mind. Couple things, and we're going to sign off. John's put his email address here, and I'll tell you one secret about John that you may not know, since I didn't get a chance to say this during the intro. John's also a Juniper and Cisco expert, so if you got a Juniper question, you could probably throw it at John as well. But anyway, John's email address is up there. If you've got a question, feel free to follow up with him or me. Our next webinar in 2 weeks is Optimized Management for iPhones, iPads, and Androids with Exchange 2007 and Exchange 2010. Val Hetrick's going to present that webinar, so any of you who have dealt with us have probably dealt with Val at some point in time, and she's going to show you how to use MAS 360 to more effectively manage devices through Exchange 2007 and Exchange 2010. It's a great webinar. I think we did it about 6 months ago. It was really popular and well received. Hopefully you can join us to learn more about that. And then on September 1st, we're going to do a webinar on best practices for enabling Android devices in the enterprise. So another one that's a good foundational webinar for how to go about getting your corporation ready to support Android devices in their environment. We've got a ton of content at the Master Center. I say this every webinar. If you've never been there, go check it out. You'll find lots of great articles that various folks within FiberLink and others have written and commented on, and you'll get a lot of great information about mobile device management there. So if you have a few minutes, check it out, and I've put some of the more popular content up there for you. So with that, we're going to end the webinar. Wanted to thank everybody, especially for all the questions. And John, thank you for presenting, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks.
No problem. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.